Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Auer Time with Crown College head football coach John Auer. Auer Time is a program where you, the fans, get to ask your questions of the Crown College coach related to the Storm, football, or sports in general, or just seek the coach's wisdom about life events that are going on out there. In this month's program, the coach talks to us about his evaluation of the 2016 Storm team. He shares with us some NFL insights, and the coach talks to us about what he'd be looking for Christmas this year. So let's get right to Auer Time. So let's welcome back Coach Auer for this week. Coach, first of all, you have team updates for us you'd like to talk about.
Well, just in the year off, I think guys played hard at the end of the year. The tough part was, we had a lot of games, and we played some good teams all within the final score in the last 5 minutes of the game. And, through that time, we're about even with those games. But, I think for us, we wanted so much for our seniors to go out and have that because they deserved that to win at the end. And so for us, it's still trying to change it around to be those guys knew that we're proud of them and what they accomplished and what they did during their 4 years.
A lot of your seniors graduating this year. How was it for you personally seeing them for the very last time?
It was tough because a lot of those guys started off, even take it outside of football, a lot of those guys started off as freshmen and were trying to figure out life and trying to do things. And they did a great job of just growing up as young men. So that was the hard part, is to see those guys and how far they've come in their growth, and whether it's their faith, whether it's in their academics, whether it's just who they are as young men, to see them moving on. A few of them are going to help us coach next year, which I think will be good and will help from that. But, it goes both ways. You're excited to see them and what they can do leaving from Crown, and excited to see the fact that how far they've come, they're going to be able to have some success. But yet you also look at it and go, I'd like to have those guys around a little longer as well.
That's the toughest part, I would figure.
Yep.
When you look back, now that you've had a chance for a few weeks here to think about it, how do you evaluate the season?
Well, as you go through things, you always look, I always go back to this: God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. It doesn't make you better as a person too as well. And so while it was tough from that standpoint to do, I think in the long run, I think it'll make us better as a program. I think, I'm excited about what Coach Bremer's bringing offensively. He's also our recruiting coordinator too, bringing some new life to that, which I think we need and have needed for a period of time. And so while we have that, I also look at it as a period of transition and excitement for us in some younger guys, some newer players, that type of thing, moving into more different roles of where they'll be at inside of that, and kind of, again, something new and bringing some life to what we're doing.
Yeah, a lot of your seniors played very key roles on your team. Do you feel like you have a junior or a sophomore ready to fill those roles, or is recruiting going to have to be a big part of that for you?
It's probably about half and half. There's some, we probably have excited about some of the younger guys. Go watch them in the weight room or in the gym and doing things. You look at a few of them, and it's pretty exciting to see what they can do and what they will do in the future. And then the other thing is just that idea of, in recruiting, okay, we have some spots that we compete for. We don't ever say, hey, you're going to start here or you're going to do this here. But your chance to compete, I think helps from that, because a lot of them look at it and say, well, you had a junior or senior starter and he's going to be back, so I don't have this. Whereas a lot of younger guys can look at our stuff and go, hey, I got a chance to compete, to play, and play pretty early.
The one thing I look at this senior group is a lot of talent there, but a lot of great leadership within that as well. Elliot Weens and Jalen Phoenix and Chris Strange, guys like that. How do you replace that?
I think younger guys have to see what they've done in the past and then also now move into those roles. I think also, too, that's part of the reason why we're going to have a few of them help us coach, is doing coaching internships and some things like that, so that they can continue in a leadership role, just in a different way. But we always talk about this: as you go through from a leadership perspective, the first thing you have to do is get yourself in order. You got to do things right inside and outside of football, so others look at you and say, I can listen to this person because of how they live their lives, what they do. From there, then you take control of your position group. You're in charge of your position group. You make sure that your position group does things right. From there, you go to your side of the football. So offensively or defensively, I'm kind of the person, one or two people in charge of that. And then your next step is as a team. Are you able to take over and be the person that the team goes to when they need somebody from a leadership role?
That's an excellent progression. I haven't really heard that before, so that's great. What does your off season look like now that the season's ended?
Oh, big thing. I also teach too as well. So I'm finishing up classes and grades, and then we're also recruiting. We have some guys coming in on Saturday to visit, and we're going out and seeing kids. We're Coach Bremer's developing a database so that we can send out emails and different things to coaches explaining who we're looking for, what we're looking for, so that we can generate more names and do that. And so it's kind of in that process right now, both generating names and then also going out and see kids. It's tough for us. We're looking for a certain type of kid, so we've got to look all over the country to find those kids. And our biggest thing is, hey, we want to be upfront about who we are, what we're about, and then those kids will find us as well.
Well, let us look at our fan questions for this week. The first one comes from Chip from St. Paul. He says, I have heard you talk on the show about how you prefer to have quick scoring drives because it means that there is less chance of a penalty or a turnover. But isn't there something to be said for a long drive that wears down an opponent's defense?
Sure. I think Chip, I'd say a combination of the two things would be good. Just because there's going to come times where you need to have that quick scoring drive or that quick pass that does it. But then you're right. There's other times where you want to give your defense a break too as well. And I think the best teams have a combination of those two things. You watch, Vikes Cowboys. I watched that a little last night, and you watch the Vikings when they got down there. What happened? They got a penalty, moving back to the 12, first and goal from the 12. Had to kick a field goal twice because of those types of situations. You take that away with the quick strike and the long, one play scoring drive and that. But you need to sustain drives too as well.
Next up, we have Jake from Chicago. He says, I always find the words and terminologies that teams use to describe plays to be interesting. How do you and your coaches go about choosing those terms?
Well, it's interesting that Jake brings that up. I've used the same terminology offensively, so for formations, motions, plays, numbering system, routes, things like that for the last 20 years because we used the same ones when I was at St. Cloud State before here. And now when Coach Bremer came in, it's different from that. So you have to transfer those things over, and that's part of the learning process as you do it. But to me, the person calling the plays, that's what I want them to be the most comfortable in what we're doing, and then we have to learn. And we've gotten better throughout. We talked about that as an offensive coaching staff. As we get more and more comfortable with what's going on, we'll have the five of us more and more of the input and those types of things as we go into it because of understanding all of the terminology. You have Sam Bradford who took a week. The backup QB had to play the first week because he had to understand the terminology. Sam Bradford's probably played football for 16, 18 years, but he has to understand the terminology before he was comfortable in running the offense.
Next up is Helen from Cottage Grove. She says, what do you hope will be your lasting legacy at Crown College?
I'd say the thing that we talk about most is just the concept of changing young men's lives and understanding that that's what our purpose is through the game of football. Is the understanding that we're trying to make the next 40, 50 years of their life better. We're trying to make their wives' life better. We're trying to make their kids' life better. We're trying to make their employees who are under them lives better. And that's essentially what we're trying to accomplish, is we're trying to give those guys a chance in life. Because you think about how tough it is out there when you're on your own. We're trying to give them a chance to have an enjoyable life and an enjoyable family and an enjoyable work experience through what we do and just teaching them about values and goals and perspectives in what we're doing.
I wanted to comment about something on that. One thing I notice about the team and about you and the coaching staff in general, I think, is that there seems to be a very balanced approach to life. Okay, I could come here on a Friday. You guys could have got hammered the week before. You could have won by 30, and I wouldn't see any different attitude about the players at all. They seem like they're adjusted well and ready to move forward on to the next thing.
Sure, I think that's what you have to do in life. You're always going to have things that aren't going to go right for you, and you got to figure out how do you pick yourself up and how do you make yourself right, and not sit there and it doesn't mean that we don't struggle with things Saturday night, Sunday, and those, but at some point in time, we got to move on from it and say, okay, we got the next challenge that we have to have. It's the same thing when you have a family. Not everything's going to go right for you in job and just life, and you got to figure out a way to lead your family and not sit there and mope while everybody else is struggling with things. You have to be the person that leads that attitude in your family, so let's start it now and work on it now.
That's excellent. Next up, we have Cyrus from St. Paul. He says, in looking at the stats from last season, one thing that really jumps out at me is 4 interceptions and 5 forced fumbles. Do you find that you can do things to increase the number of turnovers, or is this just a matter of luck?
I'd say it's a little bit of both, but I think it is an emphasis. Coach Sather does a good job. We have a drill circuit that we work on, causing turnovers and having turnovers, and how do we get more and more of those. And I think part of that is just an attitude in what you're doing and trying to force those. And so, also too, what are teams running against you as far as that goes more for interceptions and what you have from that. But I think you can put an emphasis on it. What he does whenever the ball's on the ground, when they're going against a scout team or us offensively, they scoop and score every time, no matter whether it's an incomplete pass or what it is. He tries to emphasize that in everything they do, in every drill they do, and even when they're on offense and defense.
Next up, we have Jerry from Hudson. He says, listening to Coach Sather talk about increasing the number of players on the team, I wonder how supportive the administration at Crown is of doing things to make the football team to be more successful.
Good. You take a look at it, and we have a new stadium that we have 3 years ago, a new weight room that we had last year. So from an administrative standpoint, I don't have one problem from that. We do, through time we'll get better. We have to get better more, in academics and our prowess inside of our academic programs and things like that. But some of that is just time, going through it, and other things is just some other places are a little more established because they've been around longer. For us, we have to get to those places and just work at growing those areas so that when a kid comes in, they look at us holistically and say, I'm going to get a good education, I'm going to get good balance as far as, coaches, advisors, and the interaction and the different things I get from them, and then the football aspect that comes along with it too as well.
Next up, we have Isaac from Minneapolis. He says, do you think the Vikings will win the North, or do you see Detroit really being able to win this division?
I'm a big Vikings fan, so I'd love to say it's the Vikings, but you take a look at Detroit, and they're doing things well, especially in the game last week, and the Vikings played against them. They're finding a way to win. I think that's a key, and we've talked about that in last 5 games for us in the year. We have to learn how to do that too as well, but it seems like Detroit finding a way to win, and essentially that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter where you're at score-wise in the middle of the game, but it seems like in the end they have the confidence to be able to do it, have a good kicker that can help them too as well. But it seems like right now Detroit kind of leads that division.
If the Cubs can win the World Series, then it's a choice either.
Yep.
Next up is Paul from Independence. He says, is weightlifting really the only way to improve a player's power for playing football?
I would say this. I would say 2 different things. One, the weightlifting, that part of it helps. The other one we talk about, because we always have guys that say, hey, I want to lift, let's say we lift 3 days a week. Well, I want to lift 5 or 6. That doesn't necessarily make you a better football player, because your muscles have to have time to recover, and that's part of the process. The thing that we talk about is get better at football. So if that means you got to spend half, going in the weight room and doing that, if you spend the other 2 times, go outside and work on your position. So if you're a receiver, work on catching the ball, work on running your routes, work on blocking. If you're an O-lineman, work on getting out of your stance and the power it takes to get off your stance, and even just punching a wall and doing those types of things, or with a partner. So it's weight training, but it's also just working on the confidence in the steps that you have in the position that you play.
Our next question comes from Charles from Dallas. He says, where we live, they're talking about instituting a policy in youth football that tackling is not allowed for underage 12 players. Do you think that this is a good idea, and do you see it actually hurting a player's development?
No, I'd say your tackling part should start in junior high. Because how many kids do you know in elementary school that want to play O-line? There just isn't a ton of them that want to do that. So why beat your head on a wall and have those kids do that? Also, too, the body isn't necessarily set up yet, because it's overly, take a look at the physiological side of it. The top half is way more developed than the bottom half, especially when you're in the younger ages from that. So I would say, go flag football up until you start junior high, and then in 7th grade, that's where you start your tackle football. You watch some of these things and doing it in some of the form of tackle, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are teaching tackling the right way and emphasizing that. But sometimes the body just isn't in position or hasn't developed enough to be able to do those things the right way.
Would you say that player development aspect of it, it's really the skill set of being a receiver, that's more important than learning how to, stand correctly or whatever kind of thing?
And I would say that. I would say, just understanding how to play the game of football, and I think you can do that in flag football too as well, is understanding the concepts of how things work in those. And then, like I said, once you get into that 7th, 8th grade range, hey, now we can go 11 on 11. Now we can put the full pads on. Now we can do things and tackle and play it. But up until then, I would suggest just sticking with, flag football and just doing those.
Next up, we have Abe, who asks, how impressed are you as a coach with the way that the medical technology has changed for players who are rehabbing from injuries like ligament tears from the time when you were a player to now as a coach?
It is a lot different. I tore my MCL when I was in college, and we had an athletic training room, and they did a good job of it. But sometimes they just show you what to do. Nowadays, it's more so, whether it's the stem or whether it's doing this or doing that, where it's all interactive, and it's whether it's here at Crown with our athletic trainers, or sometimes they go into a physical therapy office and they do it too as well. I think all of those things have just improved dramatically, which has lessened the time that people have to wait around for injuries.
Lee from Buffalo would like to ask of you, do you think the country can heal after a very tumultuous year?
I do. I heard somebody say, whether it's the presidential or, race or those type of things, I control my own life. And so I know those things impact us and do those things, but that's true in that case. I control what happens in my own life. And there isn't anybody who can do this or do that to me and make me think this or believe that or do it off it. So essentially, if we stick to that rule, and we stick to the idea of I want to do things that stick to who I am as a person, we'll be fine.
Our next question comes from Cindy from Northfield. She says, Coach, there is so much information out there that is wrong or a flat out lie. Do you have suggestions on where to go to find things that are most likely to be true? I'm curious who you trust.
I teach right now, I have an independent study class for Introduction to Sport Management. And part of it, we talked about how to make educated decisions and not make just decisions based upon what you think or just a whim from that. And so we talked about combining, whether it's data and stats in with your own opinion and research and doing those things. And I think for most people, it's that concept of it's more than just what you think. You have to go out and you have to, whether it's talk to other people, whether it's do some research online, there's certain things that you just have to spend time with in order to make educated decisions. And inside of that makes that information more valid, more reliable in what you're doing. And also what we talked about is, if you don't make the right decision, you can always come back and say, well, these are the reasons why I decided to do what I did, as opposed to just saying, well, I just thought this would be better. And so I think that's a big thing in, especially in coaching or in administration, is taking the time to make the right decision and finding out the right facts.
Do you think too many people just look at one thing and then decide that's got to be the fact?
Well, you get different. I have this conversation with my dad often. He'll have these things about health, and he'll see something online or he'll see something on the TV. I'm like, Dad, somebody else is probably saying the exact opposite thing. So we can't always just take one thing somebody says and cause that to be truth. We have to make sure we look at it and see, hey, what other things back that up?
Our last question of this week comes from Tina from St. Louis Park. She says, if Santa were bringing you Christmas presents for your team, what would you hope he would bring in your stocking?
I'd say I sat down with the seniors after the year was over with. We had pizza, and I just went through a list of questions. And I asked them what made them get it so that now they're productive college students and will be productive young men out in society. And they said, well, just buying into Crown and buying into what the coaches say. And so if I could ask for one thing, it would just be for our younger guys to understand that, what we're trying to do to help them and guide them and direct them is for them. And the more that they can buy into Crown and more buy into what Crown's about and growing and who they are, that would be the biggest thing that I'd ask for. Because we'll get better at football just because of that. And so, you might sit here and think, well, why wouldn't he ask for a 6'2" receiver who can go up and do this? Well, that would be nice, but the other part of it is life-changing, and the other part of it will take care of football.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
You bet. Thank you.
So we have Chris Strange joining us. Chris, named the Defensive Player of the Year by the team. What does that mean to you personally?
It's something that it means like it's all glory to God. That He gave me the ability to play football, and I was able to use it in a good way, and glorify Him in the way I play, and give Him that reward. So I think that was the most important thing for me.
Now, graduating here at the end of this year, how have your experiences at Crown been for you since the time you were a freshman to now?
a lot of ups and downs, a lot of bumps in the road. I think my freshman year I was more selfish and more not understanding what it means to play for him and playing for myself a little bit. And I think for now I've learned of what it means to play as a teammate, what it means to put my teammates first before me, and do my assignment. Like as far as if I was on the pitch, I need to learn how to stay on the pitch instead of like going to the quarterback and trying to make the play every time. So I'll say I wasn't selfish at all from the beginning of my freshman year to now. So I think that was the biggest thing.
How do you feel like you've grown as a leader here?
Making a voice. I'll say when I first came here, I was quiet and not like stating my opinions and not like speaking up or like helping the team out. So I think I was able to speak up more and point people towards Christ and help them out on the football field in a positive way.
I know a lot of the coaches around here have really admired the way that you have led this team and the way that you've, not only in your play, but in the way that you've, kind of used your own personal life experiences to help them and to guide them in that way. What do you take away from that? I mean, what do those experiences mean to you when you're leaving away from here?
That people actually like look up to me and people actually value my opinions and value my leadership. I would say like when I messed up my freshman year, the first thing Coach Hader told me was that he believed in me and that he was going to fight for me. So I think when I leave here, I'm going to want to fight for people and I'm going to want to listen to people and be more understanding and value a lot of people. So I think that was a good thing.
When you graduate, what are your plans at this point?
Well, I'm coming back here to internship, so I'll be actually on the coaching staff, so I'll be on the other side, which is really interesting, and I kind of question myself of how I'm going to be, what kind of coach I'm going to be to the players. Am I going to be the one that, like, because I know me and a couple of guys, like me and Deshaun, like we had a handshake before every game, and like we danced around and had fun, so I kind of think that'll look weird with me doing that next year because I'll be a coach, so I'll be a coach, and as I'm coaching, I'll figure out I'll apply to different coaching jobs. I specifically want to work with high school level because I think that's a vulnerable moment where a lot of young kids need a good role model in their life. So I think I specifically want to work with high schoolers. So while I'm coaching next year, I'll just apply for different high school jobs and hopefully get a good gig out of that. And I'll also like to do part-time in like church ministry. There's just a lot of different ideas. I'm also open to doing YWAM. Have you ever heard of YWAM?
I don't think so.
So it's kind of like a Bible school where you do training, like you do school, like specifically like learn like different ways to like pray or like just grow spiritually for a couple of months, and then the last few months you do service projects for the rest of the month, and then you're done, then you graduate. So I'm kind of still open into doing that. I'm also open into doing like FCA, working like with any sport through ministry, doing like sport clinics and just teaching the gospel through sports, hopefully. So
You're planning on staying in the area then?
yes, sir.
Okay, so didn't get lured back to Texas, then I take it?
No, not yet at least.
That's excellent. So you see long term that coaching is where you'd like to keep your career going towards then?
Yes. Yes. At first, probably no, but as I see how the coaches were to me here and my career, with always having my back with anything, just giving me advice and always pointing me towards Christ. And I'll say one thing that I really missed is Coach Metzger. He was the man that gave me my first Bible. And every single time I was going to trouble, I either went to him or Coach Sather or really any of the coaches. And I kind of want that in my coaching career, where players can come to me and seek advice and seek knowledge. And me just being an open ear to them and just helping out as many people as I can through that.
You were talking about how tough it is at the high school age, a lot of bad pressures on people. What was some advice you would give to a high school kid who's kind of struggling in life right now?
Yeah, I'll say for me, my graduation class was 600 in high school, so there was a ton of people. And some advice I would give is to not follow the crowd. I think that's what got me, is trying to be like people and trying to follow after people and I don't know, try to be popular and stuff. I'll say don't follow the crowd, be yourself. Know who know who says what's right and know who says what's wrong. I think we all get sucked up into this world, and we feed into what they say. So I'll say don't believe in the lies and know that the truth is in Jesus Christ, so seek to know him better. So that's some of the advice I give to a high schooler.
Now, 4 years ago, you made the decision to come to Crown College. Tell me about how satisfied you are with that decision now.
Yeah. I'm so satisfied. I'm grateful. Without Crown, I think that I probably would be at home right now, flipping through the televisions, just because I probably would have got in trouble if I would have went somewhere else. I'm grateful for the professors here. I can go into any one of those classrooms in our office, and they'll put aside work and like pray for me or like just give me wisdom if I'm going through anything. Also, like I don't know the community here, my friendships that I've grown. There's been so many guys that came through here that I'm like still close with. Thomas Andrews, Joel, a couple of guys that also even left, like Tate. There's like awesome guys here, and this community is great too. So I really just respect what the school is about and how they try to transform people into being like a godly leader, and they also aim to like help people gain knowledge here, so when they go out to the real world to impact the world and lives of others.
That's awesome. Chris, thanks for joining us, and we pray that things go well for you out there in life.
Thanks a lot.
We want to thank Coach Auer for joining us on Auer Time this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Crown College coach, please send them to us at johnauer@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's johnauer@minorleaguesportsreport.com. During the off-season, we'll be recording the show on the first Friday of each month, so please have your questions to us by the Thursday prior to that so that we can give the coach a little time to review them before we record the show. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, reminding you